I'm joined by Alex White, author of the new book in the Alien series, Alien: The Cold Forge. Alex, thanks for your time. Thanks for hooking up with us.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for having me.
Have you exclusively written in the sci-fi genre?
I have, though my debut novel, Every Mountain Made Low, was a little bit more literary, but yeah, I've been always a sci-fi writer.
Yeah, let's talk more about Every Mountain Made Low in a minute for sure. The current series, released by Titan Books, has kind of hopped around the timeline a little bit.
Yeah.
Starting with Out of the Shadows with Tim Levin, which I enjoyed very much. Sea of Sorrows and River of Pain, these do hop around the timeline. So how were you approached, or how did you come to be one of the Alien authors?
Well, I got my first novel sale in 2015 to Solaris, which was the company that printed Every Mountain Made Low, and then ended up parlaying that into some meetings with the editor over at Titan, Steve Sapple, the chief acquisitions editor, and just pitched him a lot. I'm a huge fan of the series, and when you write tie-in novels, they're looking for somebody with previous writing credentials who has a good reputation as being easy to work with, and who can put out a lot of work very quickly.
It's my understanding that the publishers have very specific guidelines from the rights holders, which I guess is 20th Century Fox, as far as what kind of stories you can tell, and things have to be approved. You can't just write whatever you want in the Alien universe. Is that correct?
Oh, very correct. Yeah. We actually, so the pitch had to go through 20th Century Fox along with a 5-page synopsis detailing pretty much everything that I was going to write. And it took them a while to approve that, but that's just how things go. And what amazed me was I did have to deviate from the synopsis a couple of times, just because as you write novels, they don't always stick to the plot you wanted them to. Or I should say, if you force your synopsis into your novel, you may be making a huge mistake. But yeah, so we sent it off to Fox when the final manuscript was done, and they requested no changes and sent back a huge letter of compliments. I was just blown away.
Well, that's exciting, because it's exciting to think that your book, with getting all these good reviews, is something that 20th Century Fox regards well, because it sort of seems like on the film end, I don't expect you to echo this sentiment, but it sort of seems like on the film end, they could use a bit of guidance. They could use a bit of, things don't seem to be going quite so smoothly for the fans on the film end of things as they do in the novels. I, for one, as a longtime fan, I'm loving where the books are going. And,
Right.
The movies, I always wish the movies would follow the books a little bit more.
And I think there's been a pretty decent amount of frustration. What's funny to me is people always talk about, well, how do you feel about Covenant and Prometheus? And it's like, well, how do you feel about Alien versus Predator 2 and Alien Resurrection? I haven't seen an Alien film that I truly loved since Alien 3.
Mm-hmm.
So
that's what, 1990, I think. And
yeah,
and
somewhere in there.
I remember enjoying Alien 3 very much upon its release, but I don't know, when I've watched it again recently, you begin to see the flaws that everyone's talked about all these years. I do,
sure.
but it's clear you can see why things like that would happen with a first-time feature director and David Fincher. He'll probably never be back in the Alien universe. It's too bad.
Oh, well, and, unfortunately, I don't think that Fincher got the amount of trust that was required as well from the studio.
Well, of course, the project was probably doomed because of the script swamp that it came from anyway. I think it's safe to say, hindsight is 2020. He probably knew what he was doing better than the executives at the time.
I would say that's probably pretty fair. Well, and that's one of the reasons why it's so nice to work in novels, because you can I feel like you can get away with a little bit more in terms of, what you're allowed to do. They're not going to come yell at you, hey, this destroyed our franchise with this one book,
Right. And they're not going to say, you got to cut this action sequence because it's too expensive.
Right. Yeah, right.
That's
exactly.
So is the story concept for Alien the Cold Forge entirely your own? And how did you feel about getting to play in that sandbox?
The story was entirely my own. I happened to be at a user experience conference out in San Francisco. My day job is in tech. And when I got the call from my agent, hey, I set you up these meetings with this editor. You always want to write Alien. Now's your chance to come up with something good. And I was just lost. I had no idea. I was, what ended up happening was I came up with 3 different pitches. And one of them, the one that ended up being kind of selected, was because I was watching a presentation by Double Robotics. They had a telepresence robot at the conference that was going around attending people's talks. And, on behalf of somebody who worked at Double Robotics. And I thought that was such an interesting idea because, what if you are telepresently assisting a group of survivors? How are they going to feel about wanting to follow your orders if you're not actually in the room with them?
Like a drone warfare kind of a thing.
Well, kind of, yeah. I mean, because, in the Cold Forge, Marcus the android is the telepresence representation of Blue Marcellus, one of the 2 main characters. And so she pilots Marcus from across the station. Usually she's not in direct lines of fire, so to speak. And but at the same time, if those people on the other side of the station don't survive, she won't get her chance to survive either. And then trying to capture that kind of psychological dynamic. And then, of course, I didn't like Burke from Aliens very much. I thought that he was I felt like he was a fool.
Yeah.
And kind of played comedically for corporate greed in a lot of ways.
That brings me to my a question I have. As a fan, I know what I think the answer to this is. What do you think the big bad of the Alien universe is? Is it AI or the synthetics, like Ridley Scott might suggest these days? Is it the alien itself, the xenomorph, or even the engineers, or is it Weyland-Yutani? What's your favorite bad guy, bad force in the Alien universe?
My favorite has always been Weyland-Yutani.
There you go. That's what I was going to say as well. Thank you very much. I agree. I always wanted, as a fan, kind of after Aliens, I felt like I knew where the story could go from there. And all these years later, it still feels like that's where the story should go, and it never did. So, I'm glad you said it.
In Alien, there's nothing more indicative than the fact of how much of a corporate dystopia that setting is, than the fact that Ripley takes like a 3-year contract when her daughter is like 3 or 4 years old.
Right.
I mean, how bad are things on Earth?
And it turned out to be 57 years, but still,
Right.
3 years is bad enough.
Right, exactly. Like her daughter died of old age before she made it home.
And if
the
you were,
company doesn't even send her flowers about it. They're just like, "Oh, sorry, your kid died, by the way."
right, of old age. And of course, the idea of evil corporate overlords that control everything feels way more relevant even now than it did 35, 40 years ago. It's something that keeps a lot of us up at night. Feels like it fits really well. But of course, all the rights holders are themselves big corporations.
Right. It's not really in their best interest to necessarily encourage us to buck that system. But it's Alien has aged the same as they live in terms of it just gets more relevant.
Right. I'm here to chew bubble gum and kill some aliens. Yeah. I'm all out of gum. Well, that is awesome. Congratulations on all your fantastic reviews for Alien: The Cold Forge. Do you intend to head back into that franchise, or you have sights set somewhere else this time?
Well, that always depends on what kind of offers they make me.
Yeah.
The book's doing really, really well. It's outsold a lot of their stuff, and I think they're kind of blown away because from their perspective, I'm a bit of a no-name author. Though I'll tell you, I just had through Orbit Books, which is one of the big 5 publishers, I had a big ship at the edge of the universe come out, which is the first entry in a space opera trilogy. So, and the next book comes out in December. So it's not like I'm not on shelves.
Right. Well, a big ship
Yeah.
at the edge of the universe is very intriguing. I've not had a chance to check that out. And also, your debut novel was Every Mountain Made Low.
That's correct.
You mentioned that earlier. Tell us more about that book.
So that's the story of an autistic woman living in dystopian Birmingham, Alabama, kind of an alternate reality where Birmingham is a strip-mined crater called the Hole.
Well, and I'm sorry, and are you from Alabama?
I am.
Wow. Okay. So I'm in Tennessee. So the idea of dystopia in Alabama, I think, well, you're already halfway there.
Well, I was born in Mississippi, so I see what I was there.
Well, yeah. Well, Western Tennessee, we're more like North Mississippi than Western Tennessee. So I know where you're coming from with the dystopia stuff.
We were, I essentially I had gotten tired of the portrayal of autistic characters in the media, and I felt that they're all too often they're portrayed kind of like the kid from Kiefer Sutherland's series Touch, and Bruce Willis's kid from Mercury Rising, and all that other stuff. It's always some sad-eyed kid, or worse, it'll be Ben Affleck in The Accountant, who uses the power of autism.
That was his superpower. I still like that movie though, Alex. I got to say.
Oh, okay. Well, I have an autistic child, and it's a lot. Those kinds of stereotypes can often be pernicious because you kind of get people who think that everything's going to work out okay if they don't vote for the right people to increase your child's services.
Yeah.
Maybe they want to know what's your kid's superpower. I've actually gotten this question. They don't understand what's
man.
They're like, what is he into? Is he really into anything? Like really, really into anything?
Does he count toothpicks? Is he great at chess? Oh, that's tough.
Right. Is it cello? Right. And so I wanted to kind of more realistically portray a character who was dealing with serious communication struggles and that kind of stuff. But in this very kind of greed-infested dystopian world where nobody's kind of going to care about her. She's got to do things on her own. And so, and it's not a superpower. It's not like she's good with guns or anything. In fact, she's quite frightened of guns. So it's a dark revenge tale because her only friend is murdered, and she decides she's going to go get revenge.
That's Every Mountain Made Low, everybody, by Alex White. Okay, I think we're out of time. Looking forward to the rest of your work, and I really appreciate your time.
Yeah, absolutely. And don't forget, A Bad Deal for the Whole Galaxy comes out this December. All
right. Well, let's take a moment. That's is that also a series, The Salvagers?
Yeah, that's part of this. The second book in the Salvagers series.
I see. And the first one is Big Ship at the Edge of the Universe. Yep. All right. Now I'm straight. All right. I can't wait to check those out. Alex.
All right. Enjoy it.
All right. Thank you very much.